Hey, everyone, I'm Tali Carr, managing partner of HBCU Game Day. I won't do the whole spiel about how much I love Tupac, but thank you, Kadeem. This is my favorite hoodie for sure. HBCU Game Day is a online platform that covers HBCU sports and culture. We do a lot of content at our website, on social media. We have 2 television shows, and even though I can't manage to unmute myself, I somehow am involved in the production of television, if you can believe that, after the way we got started here. But the guests we're going to hear from are much more exciting than me, so we'll get right to it. John Ferguson is the VP of People and Culture. If anybody can beat that title today, man, I'm going to give you $5. The VP of People and Culture. He's with Monumental Sports and Entertainment. Got his MBA from Howard University. So for the next hour, that's going to be the real HU right there. Also joining us, Malcolm Lemons. He's a former professional basketball player. He's an author. He's an entrepreneur. He just launched the new watch line. So he has a lot going on. We're going to be excited to hear from him. And Dior Gignard. Hey, Bowie from Bowie State now. Dior, I'm a Winston-Salem State grad, so, Winston-Salem State and Bowie, we've had some battles over the years, but we're going to have a great hour here. He's the senior player manager at the NFL Players Association. So really, really great work these guys are doing and really cool. Let's get started. I'm just going to go with you, John. You're at the top of the list here. Tell everybody about your current role that you have. You work a lot with professional sports in the Washington, D.C. area, esports as well. And talk about the overall impact of your role and how that affects the brand and the players and everyone in your organization.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I will say that my energy has shifted today just on the news out of Kentucky yesterday. So I would like to propose, just before we get started, that we take 3 collective deep breaths just to sort of get us all in a more centered position. So I'm going to do it audibly. Please join me. Thank you for that. Thank you for that space and that time. At Monumental Sports and Entertainment, I am really leading the employee life cycle. So that is going to start from the time that you apply for a position with our organization to your last day with our organization. We want to make sure that thread, that dash there, that we are able to impact employees' lives. But more recently, in this remote capacity, it has gone beyond the day-to-day task of managing employee performance, but really a huge focus on employee well-being. And I recognize that for Black and Brown employees or various marginalized groups, it may be difficult to come in and be your what we term our authentic selves. But I want to encourage everyone to sort of lean into that. So a lot of my day-to-day consists of coaching. It consists of advising at all levels of our organization so that we can meet employees where they are while also continuing to run a business. The pandemic has hit sports head on. And we're all still trying to figure out how do we navigate this new landscape, especially with owning teams and not be able to play in front of fans. So it has been an interesting time, to say the least. But I will say we have had some silver moments in all of this. Our esports team, thank you for referencing that we do have an esports team. They just won the NBA 2K championship. So we are ecstatic about that. Humble brag, we have a Capitals championship ring, a Mystics championship ring. I put on all my rings today. So it's been a good organization to work for. So I say, come work for the money team. Let's get some championships together. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. Let's go to Malcolm now. Malcolm, man, you have a lot going on. You're in a unique position, being a former professional athlete. You played basketball overseas for a couple of years. Tell us a little bit about what you are doing right now and how that impacts and the role of branding in your day-to-day.
For sure. Well, first and foremost, appreciate the opportunity. Honored to be among these 2 distinguished panelists, my guys, Dior and John. But for me, yeah, like you said, I got a lot on my plate, being in the house a lot more and being an entrepreneur, your mind starts to move around a lot. And whenever you get ideas, me personally, I just act on them. And so You mentioned the watch brand, and really that kind of came, the impetus behind that was seeing everything that has transpired this past year within our community, and really just wanted to make a difference, wanted to have something, a product that made Black people feel valued, feel worthy, but also give back to the community and kind of uplift and inspire the culture as a whole. So launched the watch brand because I always had a passion for watches, but wanted to donate 10% of each sale back to, Color of Change, an organization that creates initiatives and campaigns around social injustice and combating racism. So really just wanted to do my part and being an entrepreneur that I am, wanted to give back while also providing a product. And then, recently just published my book, Impact Beyond the Game, and kind of the impetus and purpose behind that was to really provide a blueprint for athletes to understand the importance of their personal brand, and really just everyone to understand why in this day and age your brand is so important. And just me being a former professional athlete and understanding the things that I did wrong during my career and the resources that I didn't have, I wanted to publish this book to give specific tactics and strategies to help athletes understand how to maximize their value. So really just kind of taking on a lot of different roles within this new landscape that we're currently living through, and trying to do my best to make a difference in the world and in my community and on the athletic community in particular, because that's really the world that I come from first and foremost.
All right, Dior Guignard, man, the senior player manager, NFL Players Association. You've had that job for several years now. Tell us a little bit about the impact of branding. You're working with these guys and trying to help them for their career once it's over on the playing field.
Yeah, so first off, as John and Malcolm mentioned, thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I love participating in events like this, especially when it impacts my fellow HBCU community. And I encourage everyone, all the participants, make sure you have your pen and pad ready. I've had the opportunity to work with Malcolm, and John is sort of like a mentor to me, and they are going to drop some good nuggets for you to take away. So definitely encourage you to take some notes. But yeah, my role, it's a little different than John's in terms of the target audience. My audience and the members that I'm serving are current NFL players. And in my role, I'm really encouraging current NFL players to think about their off the field development. We call it life after football while they're still playing. And really in terms of the role of branding in my organization, I want the players that I serve, the current players, to see me as a resource and as someone of value that can offer them, good tidbits and best practices on how to navigate their career off the field. I help players with job shadow opportunities, landing internships, and really building up that confidence to think of themselves as just more than professional football players. I've led initiatives geared towards that. One of them, I don't know, I'll get a chance to speak to, but it's kind of the hoodie I'm wearing called Athlete And I'm super passionate about this work because I didn't play professionally, but I did play football in high school and with hopes to play in the NFL. I had a freak brain injury. I fractured my skull playing football, had to get immediate brain surgery. And like that, my career my sort of career was over. And so my passion in terms of helping these players think about, transitioning life after football and what that looks like, I'm very passionate about it. I've also had the opportunity to work on a lot of social justice issues with our organization. As you know, we're a sports union, so we have to do our best to support our members, amplifying their voices and providing them the support. So I had a chance to kick off the NFL season. I work with the National Football League and Nike to design and create a shirt that all players can wear that they found inclusive. And so I spent 2 months working back and forth with Nike and the NFL to create a social justice t-shirt. On the front of it, it says, "Injustice for one of us is injustice for all of us." And to see all the players around the NFL wearing that during week one was a proud moment for me because it was outside really of my work. But I think it falls in line with the passion that I have for supporting professional athletes. Happy to be here. Glad to talk more about my role and how can it assist in terms of branding and things like that. And so that really sums up, my role in terms of branding and how it shapes the overall organization.
Well, Dior, we'll stay with you right now, and then we'll just move back down the line in reverse order from where we started. People want to know your day-to-day. You come in the office last few months, probably no one's been going into the office, but just the typical day-to-day routine work schedule for you. What does that look like?
Good question. So my job is threefold. It's three real main areas of my role. The first is overall professional development for current players. We call it career development and continuing education. Current players, we encourage them to go back to school to finish their degree. We know 74% of our players enter the league with their degree. There's, the other 25, 26% who don't. But we know baseline after their NFL career is over that they'll need a job. And the baseline of any job is a bachelor's degree, right? And so we encourage players to take advantage of that while you're still playing because you get reimbursed for it, right? So that's from a continuing education perspective. Also encouraging players who want to get into business, who want to get into real estate, learn the intricacies of it first before jumping into those space. Because I think a lot of players come into the league with, residual income. And it's like, what do I do with that income? Let me jump into real estate. Well, understand that area first, understand the landscape first, so you can be knowledgeable and have some best practices. From a career development perspective, similar to what Malcolm talked about, help a lot of current players come into the league. They've played football since Little League. My job is to encourage them to think about what else they're passionate about, right? They didn't get an opportunity to do internships in college or job shadow opportunities. My job is to show them that they do have some transferable skills, start to think about what they're passionate about or what may interest them off the field. And then while they're playing, encourage them during the off season to take part in informational interviews, sit with HR people like John, talk to guys like Malcolm, learn about the steps it takes to, gain experience and exposure in the areas that they're passionate about. So that's one part of my job. The second part, we call it rookie onboarding. I started that role in creating what that looks like about 4 years ago. But essentially, we onboard all rookies that come into the National Football League their first year, because we know that first year is probably the most stressful and the hardest as they transition from college to the pros. And so my job is really to help them see around the corner. I travel to all the teams. This year will be virtual, and I talk about health and wellness, managing stress, finances, professional development, how to brand themselves. And at the end of their 12-month rookie onboarding, they get what we call our action plan, which is goals that they've self-selected for themselves off the field. And over the early part of their career, we just remind them. So if a guy has on his action plan to finish his degree, he'll get reminders from me around spring registration, around winter registration to register and finish. And the last part of my job is what I like the most, is just overall player engagement. I'm so passionate about working on behalf of these young men because I think they fall into a lot of the stereotypes and misconceptions with professional athletes. That more than a football player, more than an athlete moniker is something that keeps me motivated every day. And so I'm going to their player camps. I'm encouraging them to use their voices when you look at issues like what we face with Breonna Taylor or police brutality or racial injustice, and using their platform of influence and what that looks like. And I help them navigate that. So I'm taking calls all day, all night with guys with their ideas or questions. And because I've been with the Players Association for 6 years now, I'm knowledgeable in the resources. And so my day-to-day has not been the same in the 6 years that I've been there. But I can tell you every day that I've worked there, it's been fun.
Malcolm, for people who want to be an entrepreneur, there's two sides to that coin. You have the time and flexibility to do whatever you want, but there's also a lot of room for distraction because you are your own boss. In your day-to-day, how do you manage that? What are the kind of benchmarks of consistency that you look for in your life now?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head with the fact that, you are in charge of your schedule, but that comes with a lot of responsibility and it requires a ton of discipline. And I think the biggest thing that you have to understand when you're taking on multiple projects is the fact that you're going to drop the ball and being okay with adversity and failure. And if you can stomach that, if you're comfortable with that, then you have the capability to become an entrepreneur. And for me, with everything on my plate, I have that understanding. I know that some things are just not going to go my way. There's some projects that are going to be, just not going to be perfect, and I'm going to fail a lot. And having that understanding and being comfortable with that has allowed me to remain productive and to see things all the way through. So I would say that for the most part, my day-to-day is never the same. It's kind of, taking it minute by minute and not having a ton of structure, but, just trying to take the next best step, so to speak. And a lot of meetings, a lot of calls, a lot of coordinations. I manage a couple athletes as well. So trying to help them get endorsement deals, marketing opportunities, things of that nature. And then with the watch brand, just staying up to date with customer service, distribution, product design, things of that nature. But understanding that, it's ever evolving, things are going to change day by day, and just being adaptable and flexible, and, just kind of organized chaos. That's what I would call it.
It sounds like it, but I can understand it as a fellow entrepreneur. Even try to figure out how much work you're going to get done during the Lakers game as well. So I definitely understand that. John, we're going to go back to you, man. The best title on the panel, VP of People and Culture. There's so many properties there that you're involved with in DC. Man, what is your day-to-day like?
I want to take Malcolm's phrase there. It can be organized chaos on our front as well. Especially, I'm trying to make all of my talking points very current because we've all shifted to a new landscape. So, March, we heard about this little thing that was coming, or we thought we didn't know. And then on Friday, we sent out an email or whatever day it was that said, don't come into the office tomorrow. And it was interesting how our entire foundation shifted, I think, for everyone on this call, but especially at Monumental Sports Entertainment, because we went into this remote capacity. So for us, I think most of my day is the opportunity to manage that organized chaos. And sometimes I like to call those putting out the fires to a degree. I encourage everyone on this call, whether you are a people leader or individual contributor, build a relationship with your HR team. They are people that you want to know. There will be opportunities. There will be your name on a list. You need those people to be familiar with you and at least be able to amplify your ability and the value that you add to the organization. But also, when you go to those people, when you need coaching or when you need guidance on managing someone or managing up or down, that they have a foundation of who you are. So I think that's very important. So trying to be proactive in some of that, because people come to HR when it's an emergency. So I'm telling you, don't make it that singular point in time when there's something that has happened and you need assistance. Have a regular cadence of going to that group and understanding what the company offers, what services they have into place. I really think in this new landscape, I've really been focused on identifying, solutions, tech solutions to help us continue to do business in this remote capacity. Prior to, March, we were not an organization that had, a plethora of Zoom accounts. We did not use Microsoft Teams. We had it, we just never leveraged it. And now it is a tool that we use day in and day out that we ultimately rely on, moving to the OneDrive. So a lot of that, while it may sound like it's a technical component, a lot of people don't know where to start with a lot of that. They come to people and culture. They come to HR as a starting point. So in general, like working in the HR capacity, I am sort of a utility player. I know a lot about what's happening all across our organization, and I'm able to be a resource for many people. And I think the next thing is making sure that we can execute the strategy that we put in place. Dior talked about his one of his roles and the themes of his job is player engagement. Mine is employee engagement. We do touch the players, but of course the players have tons of support from the front office staff and the leagues. I am a shared service in Monumental Sports. So we own the Washington Wizards, Washington Capitals, Washington Mystics, 2 esports teams, a G League team. We own the arena, Capital One Arena, downtown DC. So we are we're not like most of the sports teams. Most sports teams they generally just own the team. We own multiple teams and multiple properties. So with that, our employee base is about 600 full-time and about maybe 2,000 part-time employees. So we have a lean HR staff. So we have to have the ability to be nimble and always pivot and address those needs as they come up. But the biggest thing is employee engagement. We want to drive that. Not only do we want you to be excited on your first day, we want you to continue to have a level of excitement throughout your experience. So that is sort of my day in a nutshell. But I think what makes me most excited about my job is when I see someone reach their goals. When I've coached an employee or helped a manager in navigating a difficult conversation, and the outcome was one that benefited everyone involved. And just sort of seeing that aha moment for people when they reach what they've been working so hard to achieve.
John, let's take it back to when you were a younger man in college and getting your education. Sports is so competitive. Playing sports is ultra competitive. For people like me who weren't that talented, you're like, okay, how can I still be involved with sports, not as an athlete? And it's so competitive when you look at people like that across the country. What were some of the key moves, decisions you made in college to kind of break through that competitive field And what edge would you say you kind of developed that really served you well breaking into the industry?
Okay. So, big shocker for everyone. I was a poli-sci major. I had no desire, no vision of ever working in sports. My brother was the sports jock of the family. This totally should have been his career path. I graduated from Furman University undergrad degree in political science. I moved to DC with all hopes and aspirations of working on Capitol Hill. That did not work out. So it was 2009, economy was bad. There weren't a lot of job opportunities, and it was very competitive for a recent college grad to land a full-time opportunity. So I thought about, okay, what have I traditionally liked to do? I was that kid that was always involved in student government. So I sort of see a parallel between like student government, being student body president, to being in HR. Student government, student council, they always know what's happening. They know what's happening before it's announced. So I've always been in this position of like understanding the undertone, the undercurrents of the organization publicly and what has not been announced. So that was sort of what led me to this HR space. I actually fell into HR. I got a job working for Hyatt Hotels. I originally applied for a convention service position. That's how bad the economy was. I was like, look, I can set up tables and chairs overnight. I just moved to DC and I need some income. Went in for that interview. They said you're overqualified. And so I said, when preparing for today's interview, I saw you had an HR coordinator job. I applied for that job the night before. They're like, well, if you can stick around, we'll try to get you into some interviews. I said, I have nothing but time. So I hung around. A week later, they offered me the job, and that is how I landed my opportunity into HR. I would encourage everyone to focus on the function that you want to impact. The function that you want to impact. Simply because sports right now, that is not a stable ground. You might have seen my company in the news a couple months ago in the Washington Post. We had to do some tough decisions. You know, when we don't have revenue coming in, that means we have to make cuts across our organization. So I encourage everyone that wants to work into sports to make sure you are casting a broader net. Figure out the function. Do you want to do HR? You can go be the best HR person at a number of companies. You can be the best marketing person at a number of companies, the best community relations person at a number of companies. Go get that experience, because all of those help you build transferable skills that you can then bring back to the sports industry. What I see a lot of times is people have such passion behind working in sports that they, I think in the big picture, shortchange themselves because they're so trying to get this foot in the door with a sports team when they have closed the door on other opportunities that would have probably advanced you further in your career, maybe at a faster pace. You can always circle back to sports. Don't get me wrong. You can always circle back to sports. So cast a broader net. How did I end up at Monumental Sports? I was at Hyatt for about 2.5 years. And I said, honestly, look, I'm not getting paid enough. I need to grow. I think I've maximized what I'm going to get here. And I was just applying for jobs. This was how blind I was to even getting into sports. I just applied for a job in Monumental Sports Entertainment. When they called me and said, hey, we got you, I'm like, who is this company? Then I was like, oh, wow, this can be kind of cool. So I fell into it. So I think by default, me not having this, this is the one-way road that I'm going to travel on, helped me. So I encourage you to not get on a one-way road. There are many avenues to get you to where you want to be on your final destination. So that is what I would say, how I got to being in sports. I sort of organically fell in it. But I think the key thing there was that I was a good HR professional. And the one thing that allowed me to stand out once I got to the sports space was my relationship skills, emotional intelligence. I think the big thing that allowed me to stand out, we had a new HR crew at Monumental Sports, and the head of HR said, I need someone that's going to get out and get to know the staff. And I'm like, oh, sign me up. That's me all day. I can handle that. I'm not a person that's afraid to go into a place where I know no one and walk out with either new friends, acquaintances, giving high fives. So I think that was the sort of a natural skill that had been groomed and developed in me throughout my life that then translated to me being able to grow and be successful in sports.
Wow. Emotional intelligence. That is, as I've become older, that's one of my favorite words because of the impact that it has on people and their relationships. Self-awareness, emotional intelligence, really, really big. Malcolm, man, we all wanted to be you, a star basketball player. In college, you go on to play overseas. You had to be focused the entire time on sports, obviously. But I'm curious, what part of you did you allow yourself to start thinking about what am I going to do after basketball? Or were you just totally in college, narrow focus on just playing hoops?
That's a really good question. And I, like most athletes, was totally tunnel vision on basketball. I don't think I started to think about what I was going to do in life after basketball until my second year playing in Japan. Excuse me. And I came over in the middle of the season, so we had about a month-long break. And I obviously didn't know my teammates, didn't know the city well. And I just had a bunch of time on my hands. And I didn't have Wi-Fi. I had a computer in front of me, and I started to think about, what I had been through, the experiences that I had gone through, the obstacles and everything that I had went through to become a professional athlete. And that really kind of led me to start thinking about my life going forward. And if basketball wasn't in the picture, what would I be doing? And up until that point, I had never given it two thoughts. And so I think a lot of athletes kind of fall into this because we're taught our entire lives to, if we want to be successful, if we want to play at the highest level, you can't focus on any other, passions or any other interests that you might have. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people tell athletes, because there comes a point in time where every athlete has to retire, and making that transition is way harder when you don't give any thought to what you want to do next. And that's why I applaud Dior and his work and efforts that, the unions have done with these athletes in recent years, because we start to see other athletes, going back to maximizing that value and really leveraging that window of influence that they have to attract other opportunities, whether that be business ventures or, just anything they want to do outside of sports. And I think that's so crucial for athletes. And I think younger athletes are now getting it because we have such good role models like LeBron James, for example, Serena Williams and Alex Rodriguez, and all these athletes who have successfully transitioned or are now using their platform in their athletic career to do other things. And so it's just an incredible time to be an athlete, and just to going back to maximizing that value, really taking advantage of that platform. And I think one of the most important aspects is relationship capital. Using your platform to build your network outside of sports is so important, mainly because people want to talk to athletes. People want to get in the room with them. People want to know you when you have that attention. So for me, I made a ton of mistakes, and it took a while for me to, figure out my transition. And it's good to see other athletes starting to prepare earlier and really kind of taking advantage of that time that they have during their careers.
Just as a follow-up here, Malcolm, do you feel like having that mindset of an athlete, that ultra competitiveness, did that give you an edge at all when it came to business?
I definitely think so. I think a lot of the skills that you gain during your athletic careers can be directly transferred over into anything else you want to do. Things such as competitiveness, discipline, time management, teamwork. All these things that you subconsciously gain during your athletic careers are skills that are coveted by employers and are highly useful in any area of life. So I think definitely, a lot of the things that I learned, I've been able to apply over into entrepreneurship. And it has allowed me to, achieve some sort of success early on and kind of been the foundation for my entrepreneurial career. So, really getting athletes to understand that you might not recognize that you're building these intangibles, and that these are skills that employers covet if you're looking to build another career. But really getting them to understand that is really crucial when it comes to that transition and helping them figure out their careers going forward in life after sports.
Dior, reverse engineer for us your plan that you had, the way that you saw it as you developed it in college, and then how things turned out. Because now you're a senior player manager with the NFL Players Association. But looking at your resume, you had stops at BB&T, Lockheed Martin. Were those strategic stops for you? Were you just going to wherever things worked out? Did you always know you were going to come back to sports? Just kind of reverse engineer that for us.
That's a good question. I think, in high school, like I said, I had the stereotypical quote unquote thought of just playing professional football. I was not that good at all. I ended up getting that D3 scholarship, cut across the field version, had the head injury, dealt with PTSD. And so that shifted my mindset. I remember I transferred to Bowie State, and I'm like, all right, I know I can't play professional sports anymore, but I know I want to work in the sports industry. And I think, looking back at my 4 years at Bowie and then how I navigated getting my first job, in hindsight, I graduated Bowie State with a 2.7. I didn't take school that serious. I already knew I was very real with myself at that point because what I went through and I was on the brink of death. You look at life differently. And I look and I'm like, I remember I graduated in December 2011. And I said, because I had a decision to make. Do I try to break into sports and work my way up through sales because that's what everybody tells me? Or do I be real with myself and say, hey, I need to grow professionally? I wasn't polished enough as I needed to do. I didn't take advantage of all the resources. I knew the stereotypes that it came with going to an HBCU, being an African-American male, not being able to sit in interviews and rely on talking about my GPA or my school. And so that's when I decided, hey, I'm not ready to break in sports. I'm not where I needed to be. Let me land a job and a career in the field that I got my degree in, which was public relations. I landed a full-time internship at Lockheed Martin. Like John said, that was the best decision for my career that I could have ever made as a 21-year-old Black man out of an HBCU. Lockheed Martin was I didn't even know what it was, know what they did, but I knew they hired the best people. They didn't have a lot of diversity. And so what it did at 21 was force me to grow up, talk about being polished. I never wore a suit before until I got to Lockheed Martin. I never interacted with white women at a job before, because again, I went to HBCU and I had this singular focus of just being around people that looked like me. And so it was uncomfortable as hell. But I think those uncomfortable moments is where you grow the most, right? And so I spent two and a half years at Lockheed Martin. They brought me on full time. But in the meantime, to keep my foot in sports, I also landed an internship at Monumental Sports and Entertainment, working in marketing and promotions. That's how I met John. I worked under a lady named Rebecca Wynn. And I took that very serious. I was working in Lockheed Martin in Herndon, Virginia. I was driving from Herndon, Virginia to DC to do my internship, and then driving back to Laurel, Maryland to take classes for my master's, my management and marketing. And I look back now and that was a lot on my plate, but I also remember the goal that I had in place. My goal was to work in sports, and there's not a singular way to get there. I didn't have to just take a job in sports. I could become more polished working at Lockheed Martin, do my internships and build that network and those relationships that Malcolm talked about, kept my name in the ears of people who are hiring like John, but also gained the experience that I needed to with a company of that magnitude on my resume. And so did that for about 2.5 years. And when you talk about the title of this panel being business of branding, what I didn't realize is, as an early career professional, you are branding yourself to someone who in a hiring position like John, where now on my resume, I had my master's degree in management marketing. I had my undergrad degree at Bowie State. I had time at Lockheed Martin. I had an internship with Monumental Sports, and I was building my brand. And for me, because I couldn't rely on talking about the school that I went to when I sat in interviews, like I couldn't mention I went to Maryland or Michigan, and no knock to those, but when someone sees Bowie State, it's not at the top of mind. Like I know what that is. And then I couldn't talk about my transcript, my GPA, because, of the mistakes that I made. So when I sat in the interview, I looked at myself as a brand, like, well, how can I sell myself? And I talked about just my horrific brain injury and how I was able to get my life back. Someone that went through what I went through with a brain injury, didn't grow up without a father, went to a HBCU. Like I was that stereotypical Black man. That wasn't going to be anything. But for me, it was important to talk about that story and be really transparent and authentic, but also talk about how I overcame that. And that's what sold me in these interviews. And so when I remember I had just finished up 2.5 years at Lockheed Martin, and there was one job at the NFL Players Association. It was a player development manager. And on paper, I didn't have any of this. I wouldn't say any. I didn't have majority of the skills that they were looking for. But I remember I applied for the job and I wrote the hiring manager on LinkedIn. Nice message just to put a name to a face. I ended up getting a phone interview from her the next day. And I just talked about my head injury and my passion for playing sports, but how that transitioned to me proving everybody wrong. Like I had this chip on my shoulder. And that sold them, because in that role, it's helping current NFL players transition to life after football. And like Malcolm mentioned, transition of any kind is hard. And so for me to be able to bounce back from what I dealt with to where I was at that time, they thought it was a no-brainer to bring me on board. And so, to put a bow tie on this, as John mentioned, landing a job in sports, it is difficult. Being an African-American landing a job in sports that went to HBCU is ultra difficult, but hard doesn't mean impossible. And our route to get into that job that we want, this is all a journey. it worked. And now this is just my opinion. It worked in my best interest to not have my first job out of college in sports, because the sports industry is such a niche market. You only learn but so much. Corporate America teaches you so much more than what you can learn in sports. And I credit that time at Lockheed Martin with teaching me so much, just how to be a well-rounded, polished professional. And I don't think I would be where I'm at in my career in sports today. And so really, I would just encourage it. And I would echo kind of, again, what John said. Don't be so singular focused on just working in the sports industry. You got to have that real honest conversation with yourself. What more do you need to learn as an early career professional? Because there's a lot, right? Be honest with yourself. And if there's more that you need to learn and it's easy to land a job outside of sports to learn that and give yourself an end date, like after 2 years, I'm going to try to look for a job, then do that. You know, at the end of the day, the goal is working in sports. How you get there is different amongst all of us.
And really quick.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to sort of piggyback what Dior said. I think he essentially did the roadmap of what I was trying to tell in the story. It's you got to sell a story. That's part of your brand. But I think I remember Dior coming into my office and us meeting, him being an intern, and me already being impressed because he came to us from Lockheed Martin. That's a company that we don't hear every day in our office, Lockheed Martin. So again, I think him working in that space helped him mature, get better judgment, understand business relationships, understand the complexity of managing those relationships is key. And I would also parallel that to my time at Hyatt. I think, sports in general is a much more casual environment. You need to go, there's other companies that are more nuts and bolts of how businesses are run. Typically, sports teams are family-run businesses. So when you go beyond that, you can come to that group now with previous experience, not from another team, but from another company that might have been larger, had a larger infrastructure, had better technology, all of that stuff. And now you're immediately coming in and adding value because you can walk laps around the people that this is all they know. Not only can you quickly grasp what they know, but you're bringing a whole Lockheed Martin, a whole Hyatt Hotels information and training and skills and just how did they do this process improvement. So I think I just want to echo what Dior said. That is what made Dior stand out. He'll say, he sent that lady a message on LinkedIn. That is great because you cannot be a passive candidate in sports. But when she saw his resume, Lockheed, that's what made him stand out. That thought process of saying, you know what, don't let me just rush into a sales job in sports because they're all going to tell you that. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't want to do sales, do not start your career in sales because you're going to get to a point where it's like, how do I pivot? And everyone's going to say, you only have sales experience. You only have sales experience. Don't do it. Find the function that you want to work in, and again, get that experience.
John, let me ask you this. When you are faced with adversity, what character trait do you lean into, and where did that come from?
I think for me, I sort of double down on what needs to get done. I believe that if you've heard me speak on panels before, I talk about this, there's two types of currency in the workplace. One is your job currency and the other one is your relationship currency. If I'm feeling, if I'm in a pinch, when my back is against the wall, I'm going to buckle down and what needs to be delivered and what those outcomes are. I'm going to make sure that my work product is of quality, that is of value, and that also I am speaking the language of who I'm trying to deliver this product to. Know your audience. I've learned that over the years. Know your audience and who you're speaking to. So for me, it's really double downing that. But guess what? When those two workplace currencies, you can't forget them. They have to work sort of hand in hand. They'll say, you get your name on a list for a promotion, but guess what? The relationship currency, you were just like head down doing my work. Sometimes you come in there like, I'm just going to focus on doing my work. I don't need to know these people. I don't need to go to happy hour. I was a top salesperson. But guess what? Seller number 2 beat you out because they've been going to golf and they've been doing all this other extracurricular stuff with building rapport so that people know more about their story. They're able to see themselves in your experience or vice versa. So again, job currency is important, but never forget that relationship currency because they talk about having mentors. Mentors are who you tell the good and the bad to. And then you want to have this magical sponsor. A sponsor is the person you only show your highlight reel to. Those are the people that will mention your names in rooms that you are not in. Again, know your HR folks. They can mention your name in a room that you're not in. And then next, I would say on top of that, we as a people, we as Black people have to know when it's time to go. What do we say? We have to work twice as hard. Guess what? The system keeps telling us some things over and over again. We just saw that in the case of Breonna Taylor. Look, when you get into a position, know when it's time to go. Know when it's time to go. You're going to come in there. You're going to get all the information that you can, all the value. And then at some point, if you like, I don't do well with rejection. So you're not going to reject me but one time. I'm not going to keep coming back and knocking on the door when you rejected me. I got a chip on my shoulder. So I'm going to double down in my work and I'm going to start working on my exit strategy. But with that, you have to remember that, I think about, America, United States, corporate America, we're looking at systemic problems. Look at it in the analogy of a house. This house was built for 3-foot people. I'm 6 foot. I'm not. But in this house, I'm 6 foot. So guess what? For a little bit of time, I can crouch down and get into this 3-foot house. I can sit right here. It doesn't hurt. First month, it doesn't hurt. First year, it doesn't hurt. Maybe a year and a half, my knees starting to get sore and I'm trying to stand up a little bit. Then after a while, I realized this house was not built for me. So me working twice as hard to stay in a position of pain is only hurting me. So that's when you have to realize sometimes I have to go to grow. And don't forget that. Again, sports is great. I work in sports. I would love for everyone that wants to do that type of work in that field to do it. But also know that there comes a point in time where we have to go to grow. And don't be so enamored by the glitz and the glamour. So that's what I would say. Just remember that every house may not be built for you. And you do not have to be long-suffering in that. You have all of the power and the ability to control your narrative. You are the master of your fate. You're the captain. Let's go. Sorry, I got on a tangent there, but
look, I feel you. I got that one rejection rule too. I am an artist and I'm sensitive about my ish.
There you go.
Malcolm, when you got to get something done, man, your back is against the wall. Business-wise, what is your go-to move?
Resiliency, man. Like I think I do a little bit of a better job with rejection than John does, but I think that really comes from not only sports, but adversity throughout childhood. I think when you go through certain things in life, you learn to stomach things better as you get older. And I think that just growing up in the inner city, similar background to Dior, single parent household, mother struggled to raise my brother and I. Moving a lot, those type of adversities and obstacles you go through in life kind of prepare you for what's to lie ahead. And I think that a lot of the things that I've gone through as an entrepreneur, I'm able to endure, going back to projects failing and things not going my way and dropping the ball. Like all these things that I've been through, not only as an entrepreneur, but during my athletic career, are things that pale in comparison to what I experienced as a child. And I think you have to look at your background and understand the circumstances, the cards at which you've been dealt, and who you are intrinsically, who you are as an individual, and how those experiences are going to help you in life. And so for me, it's all about just being determined, being resilient, understanding that when I have my mind set on a goal or a vision and I want to achieve something, it's all about what are you going to do to achieve it, no matter who stands in your way, no matter what setbacks that you have to endure. It's all about how bad you want to achieve it at the end of the day, and what you're going to, what walls you're going to go through to, reach your goals. And so for me, that's what it's been about. And, what I kind of lean on in times in which, we're all experiencing a lot of adversity and a lot of obstacles and a lot of angst right now. And so just having that understanding has been crucial for me and really important as an entrepreneur.
Okay, everybody, get your questions ready. We're going to get to questions from the audience. I'm going to just leave it here and ask everybody this one simple question.
Hey, can I fill it for a second too? 1 second.
Yeah.
I won't
go ahead.
time either. I'm thinking about this, and it takes me back to when I was early career professional, and I'm like ready to run through a wall listening to John and Malcolm. And that's what this industry should breed out of you, because they both talk about adversity. Look, everybody on this call, because of the color of our skin, we cannot rely on privilege, right? We don't have that as an arsenal, but that actually helps us if you think about working in this industry and trying to navigate your way as early career professional. Because I think we have the ability, as John and Malcolm mentioned, to overcome adversity, to deal with hard times. Like that is in our DNA. And that's how you got to look at navigating your way in this industry as an early career professional, right? Like, I love the stereotypes and misconceptions that came with my makeup. Like, I embraced it because that's what kept me motivated. And that's what should keep you motivated. No, you don't go to a PWI. That's perfectly fine. You went to Howard, and you'll be the outlier. Despite what the world says about people that go to HBCU, you'll be the one that end up in John's position. And you got to believe that. And that's what keeps you motivated as you navigate this journey of reaching this goal working in sports. Because if you have a goal, you better be ready for adversity. If you have a goal, you better be ready for trials and tribulations. If you have a goal, you better be ready for no. And the part that you have to figure out now is when you get that rejection, when you get that no, what will you do? There's only two decisions you make. You can use them like, this is the system. It's the system's fault. I'll never get a job. Or you could take your lump, as John mentioned, put that chip on your shoulder. And instead of waking up at 7, you wake up at 6:30. Instead of putting your head down and working as an intern, you go in John's office. You reach out to a Malcolm who knows how to transition. And that's how excited you have to be. Like, it's a boxing match. Like, that's how I looked at this industry and getting the job. I knew I didn't have the resources. I knew I didn't fit the suit and tie and the hair comb to the side, but nobody was ever going to work as hard as me. And I knew that for a fact because that's my character and I own that. And that's how excited you have to be. Because I do say, if you're not excited listening to this conversation, this may not be the industry for you. Go work at a fucking law firm. There are 100 different law firms in Washington, D.C. Go get a job there. But when you look at an industry like sports, it is a battle. It's a journey, but that should get you excited and motivated because in our DNA is hard work and preservation and overcoming adversity.
All right, Kadeem is my guy. I want to take care of his clock because I know he wants to stay somewhat on track today. Kadeem, do we want to go to questions right now? A little Q&A.
Absolutely.
Okay, so everybody's going to put their questions in the chat, right? So put your questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer that as they come up. And specifically, if you want someone to address that, please put that in there as well. While we wait for that, John, if you could sum it up, when it comes to branding, what is your core belief? What is your center and focus when it comes to your ideas about branding?
Know who you are. Stay true to yourself and work smart. Know who you are, stay true to yourself and work smart. I think those are some of the key things that you need to keep in mind. And then again, I have to mention the emotional intelligence piece. That is a journey. Emotional intelligence is a journey. I'm still growing and learning in those places. But when I see leaders that have achieved, that have the ability to command a room, that have ability to lead others, that's part of it. Can you lead people? That emotional intelligence piece is critical. So I think when you think about your brand, you may not be the fastest person, but if you can manage all of the emotional intelligence in all the spaces that you enter, it will put you ahead of that fastest person. So keep that in mind and do good work.
John, if you had a textbook definition of how you define emotional intelligence, just to make it super clear for everybody, how would you define that as a word?
I would say it is self-management. So how do I manage myself? And then it's from an external perspective, how do I manage relationships with other people? For me, I'm growing in the self-management because you have to be cognizant that people are always watching nonverbals. Those things come into mind, especially when you're managing people. The greatest analogy I think about in having emotional intelligence is me having two little girls. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And my approach to them has to be different based on what motivates them, what builds them up, what makes them feel confident. And I parallel that to the workplace. I have to know who I'm talking to and which lever to pull, whether someone that works directly for me, they may need a straight shooter. Someone may need to say, hey, look, this was good, but, we need to, softer message. And that's what motivates them because you want to keep people open. So I think that's the emotional intelligence piece is self-management. How can I come to the door and deliver what I need to deliver, but also keep that conversation and that door open for having additional conversations. Same thing with diversity and inclusion in the workplace. I can come in there and saying, hammer, hammer, hammer. I got my Shirley Chisholm right here. I can come in with a Malcolm X on, but I also have to know who is my audience. And sometimes if I was to come into a conversation about race, specifically with my white colleagues too strong, they're like deers in headlights. They don't know what to say. Now they've shut down, but I want to keep that conversation flowing. So again, emotional intelligence, being able to have empathy for others, being aware of your verbal and nonverbals, and then just relationship management. I tell you a good show. If you want to learn how to do relationship management, watch Big Brother. I don't know if you guys watch it. My wife has me into watching it, but it's all about people strategy. There's a lot of lying on there, but it's about people strategy. And I think it's a good show to sort of see how those things come together.
Malcolm, I'm curious. I love the way that you decided to brand your watch company. I love the name Clarity with the K. And tell us about the branding there. It's a fairly new venture for you, but you described it as, hey, this is watches, but it's really undercover for something else.
Right. I think going back to the impetus, it's more of a social impact company than it is a watch brand, in my opinion. And really, the brand, the foundation of it, really was to make a difference in our culture, in our community, and kind of keeping that mission at the forefront is really kind of what's driving the awareness for the company today. And so I wanted to find a way to differentiate the company from other watch brands. There's a ton of watch brands out there, but why would you want to, buy a watch from us as opposed to something else? It's what what we stand for. It's our mission. It's what we represent to our culture and our community. And that's what I kind of want to keep, going back to the forefront, kind of keeping that the focus of the company, not really the watches. And just kind of laying that foundation and kind of making that be the driving factor for the company is what the focus is.
Dior, we got a question in the chat about social media and all those different platforms. Man, there's a lot of power in social media, and from dealing with players in the NFL, man, you can find yourself in a lot of trouble. You want to tackle that question there?
Yeah, I think social media plays a huge part, especially as an early career professional. You think about, you have a resume, you have a LinkedIn, you have somebody like John who's in a hiring role position. When he goes through and he has a position open and it's a coordinator or internship, they don't know you as a professional. Like if I was 18 and he's looking for a job, he doesn't know me. All he sees is what's on my resume, and he'll probably Google me to see what's on my LinkedIn. Like, that's your brand. I would hate to not get a job because my LinkedIn isn't thorough enough. I have an Instagram, a Twitter, but I don't take my LinkedIn that serious. I don't have a headshot. I don't have a bio. Because you look at something like a LinkedIn, where if I'm an early career professional, and this is what I did when I was 18, I looked at 10, 20 different LinkedIns and I stole the format of all of them. I looked at somebody like a Malcolm or a John. I'm like, all right, the way they structure theirs, I'm just going to put my information in there. And it was thorough, and it had a sentence or two for each job description. I realized that. And again, I think my mindset was like that because when I sat in an interview, I couldn't talk about my GPA or my school, but I knew if I did if I focus on a LinkedIn or a resume to show kind of who I am, then that could paint a picture to a person like John of, this is what this person cares about. He doesn't have grammar mistakes. In my resume, I put on there my volunteer opportunities. I volunteered at American ISB Association. I spent my weekends feeding the homeless. Like, that starts to paint a picture of the type of person you are, what you care about, your character. Like, that's how you have to look at building your brand on social, because times are changing now. Like, for me, as I look at interns in our department, if an intern doesn't have a LinkedIn, I don't consider them for internship. Like, it's that critically important to me for you to realize, because that's something that you can control, right? Some of the other experience, you need the job to get the experience. So I get a pass on that. But if you can't have a LinkedIn, then put forth the effort to find it, because it's that easy to get one, then I feel like you're not taking it that serious. So branding yourself on social media is critically important to your overall development and how you're viewed by a hiring manager or someone in HR.
John, you have a question from Chris Patton in the chat, who talks about relationship currency and building that relationship currency.
So building relationship currency, and I believe her name is Carla Harris. Look her up on YouTube. She is like the Black queen of Wall Street. This is where I get some of those talking points from. But relationship currency is, if you're an introvert, putting yourself out there, there's many ways in which you can build one-on-one relationships with people. And this sort of goes back to when I say stop by your HR team's office, get to know them. If you don't like big crowds or people don't energize you, go about it the one-on-one level. If there's team outings, get to know your boss. Your boss needs to like you. Now, look, you don't have to necessarily feel like this is my best friend, but you need to sort of play that game in developing that relationship. They should want to understand where you want to go in life. You should be driving your professional development and letting them know what that is. But again, take those opportunities. So if you go to the company picnic, here's a great example. Company picnic, company holiday party. Guess what? You can go and only sit with Dior and Malcolm because those are your core friends. Or you can say, hey, fellas, let's talk for a minute, but I'm going to try to work this room just a little bit. That way, more people know who I am, and I can build relationships with people, because you never know what shared experiences we have. Because guess what? The journey through life has a lot of ups and downs, but we all go through it. Some of us have, as Dior said, privilege that can help us land in a whole different place or land in a higher spot. But guess what? Some of us don't, and we have grit and determination to overcome. And so I would say really that's how you do the relationship piece. And one thing I want to add here, when you're connecting with, so Dior said he sent a connection request to the hiring manager that gave him this opportunity with the NFLPA. Make sure you personalize your invite. I have tons of connections on LinkedIn. Anyone from this discussion today, I probably will not, I will not accept your request if you don't tell me I've had an opportunity to hear you speak on the HBC panel today, or this is where I got your LinkedIn profile from. I guarantee you I won't accept it, because I at least try to be true to who I'm connected with and know that we had some moment in time, and it's just not, I just sent me a connection request. So personalize that invite. That goes a long way. So many people have gotten my attention by saying, hey, John, I've applied for XYZ position with Monumental Sports. You only get so many characters, but I might be inclined to respond to that. So personalize that invite. If I just get, Dior wants to connect with me, who is Dior? So personalize the invite, and that goes another step into building those relationships. And guess what? If you don't have connections, LinkedIn is a great way to get a connection with someone in a company. Look for people that look like you. Look for people that went to your school and figure out how you can get into those networks and just say, hey, I'd like to pick your brain and have an informational interview. That's you auditioning, essentially. You want to let them know in the informational process of your questions and your probing of what you can bring to the company.
All right, let's go to overtime with one last question. And John, I think this falls into your wheelhouse as well. Carmen Robinson wants to know, looks like she's in marketing and maybe wants to switch over to HR and personal development, but doesn't have the experience, and she wants some advice on that transition.
I would say, Carmen, message me on LinkedIn and we can set up a time to talk. But I would say figure out where there are opportunities in which you can volunteer in that type of space. Guess what? Right now, all of us, no matter where we are Chief Black Officer, because everybody wants to hear our voices. All of a sudden, the things we've been saying, they definitely want to listen and hear now. So leverage that moment. Can you help with some sort of new initiatives? Can you volunteer? Can you be on a different council that they're trying to develop? Because I can guarantee you that every company right now is trying to mobilize and amplify and support their Black employees, their Black colleagues. So how can you navigate that space so that you can get into some new rooms and into some new circles that align with where you want to go?
All right, John Ferguson, Malcolm Lemons, and Dior Guignard, thank you guys so much for being a part of the panel today. It was the best hour of my day. And a full day is still ahead here on the virtual summit. And Kadeem, I'm going to pass the rock back over to you. Thank you so much for allowing me and HBCU Game Day to be a part of the program this morning as well. Had a really, really great time.